Good afternoon, Scott Baker.
Mikey, how are you? Time for another edition of Lead Better, our podcast conversation where we talk about today's field note from Admired Leadership. Is it 1,583? Is it 1,583? It's the same number. I've been saying 1,000, but then I realized maybe you don't need to say it that way. Maybe you do it the fast way. Do you have an opinion?
When you come to that kind of numbering, I think I default to like the way that I say my phone number when I see a 4-digit number right there. And
Right.
so 1583 is kind of the shortcut.
It kind of has a good rhythm. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the last four digits of my phone number are 1387. But the reason that I say it that way is because I was teaching my kids what my phone number was. And I said, by the way, I was 13 years old in 1987.
Oh, how about that? Yeah.
So that's how you can remember. So because of that, that's the pace of that. It's always going to be 1387.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
That's an odd question. Why would you bring it up?
Well, I don't know. There's something about the fact that when I'm saying, because when we did these conversations just on X years ago, I didn't kind of number the field notes. And then we've been doing this for 100 days plus on a multi-platform and focusing on Substack. And so all of a sudden I was saying, here's the number. And I kind of do because I do, my daughter and I, when we're driving to school, we call Dr. Rob Gilbert's Success Hotline. And he's been doing this for like 30 some years. And so he's like today's number, I don't know, 12,000 something. And I find I like it. Like I like the fact that I feel like I'm in a stream of history with the content around that. And I like the idea of kind of enforcing the idea that these are not just peripheral conversations about, a happenstance Substack, email on leadership, but something that is tied into something that is, 40 years of blood, sweat, and tears around really unpacking these ideas. And that even now we're at 1,583 field notes into the Field Notes project, that it's kind of cool. And then here we have another sort of cool angle with some things in it that I'd never thought of before. So You're asking me to say, and I come from a journalist background where it's like when we think about typeset and we think about capitals and what things are capitalized and not capitalized, you heard me the other day say, and sometimes when you cite a monetary number, like $1,400, should that have the comma in it or not? And there's actually is debate around that. So when I was saying that, it's on the top of my mind, and now you've distracted me by getting me into it. But these conventions are sort of important. The taxonomy of how we talk about things are important. So I just want to know if you had a preference. I was thinking of switching from saying 1,583 to 1,583, but I wanted to see how you felt about it.
No, I had the only real pushback I've ever gotten on anything like this is a military person who told me we do not use letters for numbers. So you don't say 1308, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because it's 1308, right?
Yeah.
It's not an O, it's a 0. And I think that's for clarity as well. Like there's a lot of misinterpretation that can come between 0 and O.
Right.
And so, but when it was told to me that way, I was like, oh, you're just being persnickety about it because that's common valence for me to just say 1308. He's like, nope.
Well, you don't. Yeah, you bear, and there's clarity there because we don't want bombs being launched when they don't need to be because somebody was like, I thought you said "oh," right? But back in the late '90s, everybody's like, aren't they going to talk about the field note? The field note title, by the way, today, just to kind of show you, is team members who consistently misinterpret your directions. And maybe it's because you get bogged down in all kinds of like peripheral things. But just so everybody remembers, late 90s, I was a television news anchor and people were being like, in the year 2004, we're going to be doing this. And I'd be like, we're not going to say that. We didn't say 1,904. We said 1904. We're going to say 2004. And for years, I would say 2004 and people were like, why are you saying it that way? It's going to be 2004. It's like, no one will say that. And everybody told me I was wrong for years. And then as soon as we got past 2000, it was 2001, 2002, et cetera. So anyway, now back to the issue at hand. The issue at hand is this field note on team members who consistently misinterpret your directions. And the point is that we all have leadership moments ourselves, or we've seen them where somebody has said, here's the situation. Here's what we need to do. And everybody's like, okay. And then later you peek around the corner, you're like, you're you're doing exactly what we said we weren't going to do.
Right.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. So how does that happen? Were you an idiot? You were not clear enough. You didn't explain it well enough, or they're just numbskulls, or they're deliberately trying to undermine you. There's a lot of array here. And I think there are more than one or two pieces in here that I think I had not really thought through or encountered or wrestled with. So
right. You need to take some time to get to this, though. Like the first time you're misinterpreted, you know, as a dad, your thought is, okay, we're dealing with disobedience here. We need to figure this out. Might not be disobedience, right? And so you learn that early on as a parent. You should understand this as a leader as well. The first thing you think about ought to be the notion of, was my communication clear? This was probably my fault. Let me get curious about my own communication, even before I get curious about how you interpret it or what you actually heard, right? There's 4 or 5 layers before it gets to an accusation of disobedience, right?
Yeah.
And so to assume that you understood clearly what I meant, and now I know that you're just being belligerent, or you have another reason why you're being insubordinate.
There are categories where that's true. And the field note says some people are just, not naturally. They've developed, I'm just going to always be resistant. Other people are like deliberately sending you a message. You said that, I'm not going to do that.
Right. So, and I have one kid who has like this obstinate kind of thing that's raised up, right? So I am careful in the way that I talk to him, and I include him with everything, even if it's like a simple, like, time to head to bed now, right? I'll have to phrase it in a way where he's not going to have the opportunity to see it as something to be obstinate against, right? And, so we create peace around the house by not telling him what to do.
Right. Okay.
Right? We create peace in the house by recognizing that there's a better way to approach it. Now, I don't want to be, in the halls of the office, I don't want to come across as parental. And every once in a while, I will like talk to a person the way that they want to be talked to. But I don't always want to do that. I would much rather be like, okay, let me first pepper myself with the idea of, was I clear? I think I was pretty clear. Right. But that's a great first step. And it takes some time for leaders to get to that. If you're new in a position, you might be thinking everyone is, running around doing whatever they want and ignoring me. That might not be the case.
I like how, we talked about some scenarios you just did, and the tone that you think is clear, or the facts you've used, or the way you've laid it out. And the field note sets up scenarios pretty nicely. In fact, usually in a tight format of our email, we don't always have a lot of these. Well, here's an example, but it gives them, and I think it helps us focus here on this one. So you have this idea of, I've come to somebody on the team and I say, you know what? I've looked at where we're at. I know your plate is pretty full. This other person has, some skills in here, and this is probably a good opportunity for them to step into this. So I'm going to pass this one off to them and have them take care of that while you continue whatever. The scenario in the field note is, a couple of days later, whenever the person comes back and they're like, well, here's my plan for the original thing. And you're like, I already told you that I was wanting this to go to the other person. So rather than handing that off, they come back because they took this as, he doesn't think I'm capable, right? So he wants us to move it off. So now I'm going to get more invested. So now they've got this reason. So, or you say to a colleague, I don't want you to hold a meeting on that because I'm working on some stuff behind the scenes. And then suddenly you get an email and everybody's copied on a meeting that's happening on Thursday afternoon. And you're like, no, that was what I wanted to absolutely not happen. And so, or you say, here are your 3 priorities for the quarter. And they come back and they say, great. Well, my number one thing is going to be this. And it's something that wasn't on the list. You can imagine how in any of those 3 scenarios, you as a leader would begin to pull your hair out.
Yeah. You're not listening. Okay.
Yes,
listen. Right. And you don't want to have to say that because, I could hear myself saying that to my kids. So of course you don't want to say that in the office. Right. And so, once you get to the point though, where you're like, okay, it's not my communication. It's not rampant insubordination, and it's not people who have an issue with me. And so they're intentionally being belligerent about this, but there is this consistent misinterpretation that's going on.
So what's going on? Right.
Then how do we help that? Right. And so a lot of times, like we've qualified this with examples that are being like, let's get all the way through, and you still have misinterpretation that's going on.
Now, the field note looks at, it says there's usually one thing at work. So the question will be, is this sort of the universal that's the most common scenario? I think there are some other cases where you could say there could be some other factors, but let's say that this one is it. And the field note is saying that it's basically because people hear what they want to hear.
Yeah. Now you could qualify that as not listening, but that's not necessarily not listening.
Yeah.
It's like they're emphasizing, like even in the very first scenario that you mentioned, someone could be like, oh, I assumed that you wanted me to run strategy, and they're, even though we're handing it off to them, they're going to run tactics.
Yeah, because you trust me and I'm capable and whatever. Right. They have their own filter of self-interest. And in fact, the reason why they're actually excited to come back to you with what they did do, like because they totally missed it. Like they heard part of it and then they didn't go in the right direction.
Right. So the best way to kind of solve for that, if you see this happening over and over again, and it's not belligerence and it's not insubordination, is to recognize that you should probably communicate things with actions instead of don't actions, right? It's much easier for a mind to latch on to the idea that here's two things I actually want you to do versus what it needs to be interpreted by don't do this. Right.
Correct. It's the negative of the don't hold a meeting, right? That we and actually I don't think that I'd ever really pondered this. And and the literature actually is pretty clear. It is true, right? When you see a message on a sign, we sometimes see these, no littering, right?
Yes.
So then you're like, I hadn't thought about littering. Now I'm thinking, now maybe I litter more, but if there's an admonition of something to do in the positive, it's much more likely to produce the direction that we need to go.
Right.
And you're like, oh, that's interesting. So me just saying, don't have a meeting, right? You for whatever reason, you might be like, oh, he does want me to have it. He just wants it to be on Thursday instead of Wednesday.
Yes.
So you need a specific thing that says, I want you to hold off on the meeting. And so here's what we're going to do. On Monday, you and I are going to meet because by then I'm going to have put together the behind the scenes conversation. And then on Monday, you and I will decide when this meeting is going to happen. So is that good time for you, the calendar Monday? So we're not going to say anything about this until we have this meeting on Monday. Great.
Okay.
Much clear, specific action.
What if it's signage on somewhere, right? And you're deciding what the sign reads like for a specific non-action or action, right? Is that something so there is a bathroom on the top of the mountain range in Utah where we do
where you just were, right? Yeah.
And when you pull off there is this single stall rest area. And inside of that bathroom is a commode. And there's a sign that tells people not to put anything but toilet paper into the commode, right?
Okay.
So you're
welcome to Lead Better, where we get very, very graphic.
But it says it in a very specific way, right? Okay. And it actually goes through it in 3 different ways where the sign is spelled out in such a way where it says, please do not put anything but toilet paper in this. And then it goes on to say, it is very difficult for the person who is going to clean it out to remove what you've placed in there, right? So I can't remember the exact wording, but it's like it appeals to your empathy, right? That says you have to picture that someone actually has to put their arm down in this thing, right? And remove the thing that you put in there. And so the first time I read that sign, I was like, oh. Right? But the communication as it comes out is like, oh, it's very clear what you're doing. In that moment where this is a restriction, do not place anything other than, right? It's just a restriction. There's no opportunity for you to tell you what to do, right? But they actually need to put the picture in your mind of the person who actually does have something to do in order for you to be like, oh, okay, now I actually feel for that person. So I'm not going to do that.
There are a lot of disturbed people in the world, who would be like,
yes,
oh, I know what I'm going to do now.
Right.
And they're going to definitely make it terrible for that person.
Right. Yeah. But it does make me think that there is like something to that in the way that that sign was constructed that we need to have here. Like I even had a guy, because I didn't go to that bathroom, so I had somebody take a picture of it and send me the sign, because I remembered it from 2 years ago when I was there. I was like, when you go up there, take a picture and send me that sign, because I want it as a visual reference. I should have had it up here on the
right.
On the
that would have been helpful. Yeah, yeah. So, but I think you see the point that we all know, even with our kids, and we're like, I told you, why didn't I give them something specific? What's the version? The field note talks about, kind of like in my meeting scenario, if you said to somebody, rather than you and I are going to meet on Monday and we'll talk about the schedule for the meeting, what you say is, before we schedule the meeting, I need to have these 4 data points. Can you research those data points? You and I will meet on Monday to go over that data, and then we'll decide on next actions. So if I give you a task of like, can you go do this? And it's not like a make work task. It's like something that's actually pertinent to the decision. Now we have something, and it doesn't mean that you're never going to be misunderstood. You still will. You have to actually take it as a given that your message will be misunderstood. So just doubling down on it and saying, don't do this, you're still going to have people that misinterpret it. So the more that you can kind of put this into a forward look, into an action to do, and you give the signposts of it, then you're going to limit and minimize this. And I think whether it's kids or colleagues, that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. This is a fun one.
Yeah,
I enjoyed. I don't think we've got a preview on tomorrow, but
not yet. Yeah, you mean for field note number 1539,
Saturday, October 11th.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Mikey.
Talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.